Um, Foreign Secretary, as you know, visited Maldives on the 27th and he left this morning. Came in at late night, 27th, almost you can say 20th morning, early morning. So he had essentially 1 day here, which was yesterday. He left this morning for Vienna. He had an important meeting there. This is his second meeting in a matter of about 10 days. As you know, he was here on the 10th and 11th of February. Prior to his visit, we had Secretary West, who came in from the Ministry of External Affairs, who came in as envoy of the Prime Minister, that's Mr. Ganapathy. So this is part of our sustained engagement with the Maldives in working closely with all concerned in taking the process forward and trying to work with all concerned in facilitating what we would see as a solution that would be satisfactory to the parties involved. Now, during his current visit, the Foreign Secretary had very extensive meetings. He has, of course, called on the President twice. He has met the leaders of all the major parties, and this time I think he has also been able to meet representatives literally from every political party in Maldives. It's been a very extensive process of consultations in which I think every stakeholder in the political process has been met, has been contacted, and I think their views have been taken on board. Now, of course, here we are playing the role of good officers and working with the parties to the extent that they would like us to. So I think the whole idea is to see how the parties themselves, can take their own agenda forward. And I think last time when Foreign Secretary was here, you would be aware that he had facilitated with the Office of the President the adoption of a discussion paper entitled Maldives, Elements of a Possible Way Forward. And this paper had been accepted by all concerned. I think there have been press releases on the website of the Office of the President and the website of the DRP and the press release by the NDP. And the idea was to see how this process was moving forward and what more could be done and how in any way that we could be supportive of this exercise. Now, during this current visit of the Foreign Secretary, he also was invited by the convener of the All-Party Consultative Committee, Mr. Mustafa, whom, as you know, was appointed by the President to convene the All-Party meeting, which follows from the agreement that was reached when the Foreign Secretary was here last time, that the parties would meet to decide on days for early elections, would meet to work out the modalities of any amendments that have to take place. So this time the President suggested to the Foreign Secretary that he should also address the All-Party Consultative Committee while they were meeting yesterday, last evening, and Mr. Mustafa convened the meeting, and I think it allowed for broad interaction with many parties, not just some of the major parties, but also many of the other parties that were present in this particular meeting, the Jamhuri Party, the DQP, the Qawmi Ittihad, the Dalat Party, the People's Alliance, all the parties that have been part of this process were also present, and so we could have extensive consultations and understand everyone's point of view more clearly. There was some broad, I would say, measure of agreement in the important principles that were being followed by all parties. Of course, first of all, I have to underline that it was good to know that the parties have met 3 times as part of the APCC process under Mr. Mustafa, and that they have identified certain areas based on which they would continue discussions and take the process forward. Here I think the principles that we have identified, which we will of course circulate to you as part of our statement, is, if I can read out, continued dialogue on the way forward, including possible amendment to the Constitution and enactment of legislation for institutional reform. All parties recognize the need to undertake the necessary amendments and legislations within a quick time frame in the People's Majlis. Broad agreement on the need for early elections, and this process, and for this purpose, the All-Party Consultative Committee and further consultations of all major parties would continue. So these are the broad principles that we identified. But of course, I think the parties are continuing their engagement, and I'm sure the sense we have, and I think that optimism is shared all around, is that there is a purposefulness about this exercise, and that they would be moving forward expeditiously. And I think everybody understands across the board that early elections are an important part of the way forward. But as part of the early elections, you need certain amendments, certain legislative enactment to be undertaken, certain essential reforms that have to be undertaken to judicial and other institutional capacities, and these are important measures in the effort to address the political situation in the Maldives. So this is just a brief overview of what has been. I just want to underline that that it is part of India's commitment, and it is also a part of our very special friendly and cooperative relations with the Maldives that we are engaged in this process. It is, I would say, a good officer's approach. It is a facilitatory approach. It is based on mutual consent, and certainly whatever is done with the full cooperation and I would say support of the parties involved. I would say that it also reflects the historic relationship between India and Maldives, where there is so much of interlinkage in terms of our respective economies, our respective security interests, our respective bilateral interests, that I think this sort of process is something that we are happy to assist with, and from what we understand from our Maldivian friends across the board, each and every party yesterday made it clear that they were very happy to see us, Foreign Secretary and other senior dignitaries from India, playing a facilitatory, supportive role, and they would like our process to continue as and when the need arises. For our friendship with the people of Maldives, and we would work with all concerned. And he also pointed out that Prime Minister, when he had come here on a bilateral visit in November last year, he had gone to the People's Majlis, he had addressed the People's Majlis, and he had spent time with each and every member of Parliament, just a few minutes with each and every member of Parliament, to underline the importance of our relationship with Maldives as a country and as people, and not, let's say, individual parties or the government of the day. So I just want to categorically deny that this question was raised or responded to.
Do you want Indian government want any deadline for our election?
Look, I mean, the parties are discussing these issues, and I think it's part of the all-party consultative committee. The Majlis will convene. This is clearly something that has to be discussed within the domestic parameters. Definitely, the fact that early elections have to be held has been, I think, universally recognized, and each and every party has conveyed to us that early elections is a sine qua non. This is something that is agreed all around. When the date of elections is just a question, a matter of working out the details between the parties. There are logistics involved, there are other aspects involved. They will have to work it out, and we are happy to continue to follow the progress in the consultations as per the dates involved.
Mr. from the TV, I just want to clarify something. Just now, what you said, did you mean to say that all the parties involved in the political issues and to solve the problem agree with an early election?
One thing that we discussed yesterday in the all-party consultative committee meeting, rather the convener put across, was there were some points that everybody could agree on across the board, whether it was party A, B or C. And one of these issues was early elections, which, as you know, has already been part of the earlier agreement, which had come out in the website of the President and was announced, and was part of a broad framework of understanding that was reached during the Foreign Secretary's last visit. But this time, the consultations were much wider, and every party, whether in the Majlis or not, was represented. And I think all people who were sitting there confirmed that that early elections is something that is something that they are in agreement.
And I want to ask something regarding the last night's all-party talks. We heard that during all-party talks last night, Foreign Secretary forced all the political parties who support the current government to agree on a date to be finalized before 2013 to help the presidential election. Before 2013 and before end of the 2012, and we heard that after the political parties participated last night said no to his request, so he asked MDP to continue with their protests and order.
No, I think let me clarify that what Foreign Secretary said was that he was interested in knowing the views of the parties and what would be the lowest common denominator. That means what everybody could agree on, which is far from what the parties would want individually. What we are trying to see is what is the common acceptable point of view of all parties. And that is what was conveyed yesterday. So I want to clarify that there was no effort to leave alone force. There was no effort to even, in some senses, move the parties towards any decision that they may not be willing to. And certainly, I think our efforts has been to ensure that there should be no disharmony, that there should be an atmosphere of calm and peace, conducive to the holding of elections whenever that is held. And our effort has been to tell all the parties concerned that this principle is one that should be consistently applied across the board. So the question of telling any party what to do doesn't arise, particularly as you say, that are telling MDP to continue demonstrations is absolutely out of the question. I want to categorically deny that. And to say that yesterday's talks were a very, very positive approach. I mean, Foreign Secretary was asked by the President to go across. The convener invited him. And all he did was to seek from the parties what is their lowest common, what is it that all parties can agree to. And which is what I said, they agreed to the fact that there should be early elections and the all-party consultative committee would hold further consultations. The need to undertake necessary amendments and legislation within a quick time frame in the People's Majlis, and continued dialogue on the way forward, to amend the constitution and to enact that legislation which would be necessary to take the process forward.
So on that note, you're denying the fact that Foreign Secretary had submitted a proposal or an agreement for all the parties to agree to early elections.
No, it's not a question of,
Because there was a rumor that there was a document that is an agreement that was put forth to the all-party talks so that everybody can agree to early elections.
No, what there was the agenda, the generally agreed items that all the parties had been consulting on, and I think what was listed was the fact that there was agreement on a broad number of areas that the parties had already agreed to, and what we wanted to do is to find out what was the parameters of this. I mean, is it something that we could take as being the essentials, the principles on which the parties would operate, and that is the one that I have enunciated to you. So I think if you look at it carefully, the elements that had been put forward yesterday were those which were already contained in the agenda that the convener had drawn up. I think there was no contradiction. What we wanted to do was to see, whether these parameters are those that could be taken forward. And I think we were quite happy to note that everybody agreed that discussions were going very well. All the parties were sitting down and meeting, which was not the case 10 days ago. All the parties were happy to contribute to how to take the process forward. All felt that there was a responsibility on their part to get some sort of satisfactory arrangement whereby the Majlis could meet, convene and enact certain amendments and legislation necessary for early elections. So essentially the way forward was quite clear based on their own discussions, and I think our idea was not to say that here's a paper in which you must take forward. There were various papers floating around, but these papers were all part of text that has already been used by the various parties, and there could have been one or two ideas here and there that didn't suit some parties, and the idea was to bring it into an area which all parties could agree to. So I think the idea that there was a text which everybody had to sign on to is not correct. There was general agreement in some issues, and there was also attempt to see what can be further taken up. And what we arrived at yesterday was what all parties could be comfortable with, and wherever necessary, they would continue the discussions. In fact, discussions continued even later in the evening, and we are confident that they will continue to take place.
Last two questions. Has India proposed a timeline for the amendment of constitution and the early elections? That's my first question. And the second question is, has India talked with the all parties whether the president would be able to open tomorrow's session in the parliament? Whether there was any discussions regarding that in all party discussions?
Well, first of all, I think there was general sense that the Majlis, once it convenes, will have to go about its business as expeditiously as possible. That is why we have said within a quick time frame. But I think that was also a sense that we got from all the parties that there were some important things that had to be enacted, that had to be adopted, and these priorities would be placed before the Majlis, and the parties would take it forward.
Has India proposed a timeline?
No, I think we are not in the business of we are trying to see what is possible within what the parties want. But what we certainly have said was that a quick time frame, and that I think is also something that all parties agree that it should be as quick as possible, because obviously these are fairly these are issues that need to be worked out in Parliament. We don't know what sort of time this will take, but our idea is that it should be as soon as possible, so that the process can move forward expeditiously. And as far as the convening of the Majlis is concerned, I think it is everybody's desire that it should be convened in the manner that is within the norms of democracy and within the Constitution of Maldives, and that the parties would work together in a responsible manner to get the results that the people of Maldives would expect.
Mr. Miyad, Latif, last question from Miyadu.
Sir, I'm Latif from Miyadu. My question is now, hopefully everybody is trying to, hoping that this will go the way which is most beneficial to the nation, but still we are in doubt of the frame lines. I mean, the dates of how it will go. But on the other side, we're not knowing that MDP is now demanding so many things and so many households are there. So while all these procedures are taking place, our economic situation is very bad. It is going to be very bad, worse than last year, because last year also we were very bad. And with all these things, we might have to face much worse situation scenarios this year. But last year also, when we were in real problems, we can remember that India has granted loan without signing the agreement also. So such a close relationship we were having with India. So in this year, if, with all these problems, if we have a situation like that, if the scenario comes like that, will India help Maldives?
Well, let me say something. Our engagement with Maldives is much deeper, much multifaceted than most other countries. And there have been a number of occasions where our requests have been made to us, and India, without thinking twice, has always come forward to assist Maldives. In the recent case, we were asked to expedite part of the $100 million rate line that was agreed last year, and we immediately agreed. Not only we agreed, we delivered. There was also a request to roll over the treasury bonds of SBI. We did not even issue a press release, but I would like to inform the media that India has done it. The idea of this visit of Foreign Secretary as well as the earlier visit of our Special Envoy was to underline how deep is our commitment to the peace and stability of Maldives, how much we value the relationship which has stood the test of time, and our continued desire to engage with every player, with every stakeholder who wants peace, stability and constitutional order in this country. That has been our effort, and this has been underlined. These visits are, a series of engagements. Sometimes the progress is very, very fast. Sometimes the progress, because the process is complex, and number of institutes are involved, number of parties are involved. There are things that have to be done under your particular regulation or act, which has to be discussed in the Parliament, and things cannot be prejudged. The effort of India, if I can reiterate, has been to engage as deeply, as intensely as possible with all the stakeholders in the Maldives. And I think I am confident in saying that this engagement has been found to be of great use and has been appreciated by across the board. Difference of opinion is something that we all live with and we take forward. Our effort has been to take forward the best possible consensus line that has emerged and then build on it for future dialogue. Because our engagement is not a one-time engagement. It's a continuum and it will continue. So I think on that note, I would like to end this press conference, unless my colleague has to add anything.
You know that we are always supportive of whatever Maldives needs, and we continue to be supportive.
Any type of role is to be repeated from you, sir.